어머나, 저기 사람 움직이네. 아나야, 저거 봐. 저기 바늘을 먹는다. 저기.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the YS channel. It's been a little bit of time since our last review, but we figured we'd drop a special one for all you viewers and newcomers. So today's movie we're going to review is the North Korean slave labor magnificent classic known as Pulgasari. So for anybody unfamiliar with this movie, it's got an insane background and backstory, which we are going to talk about a little bit later in the review. But essentially, this is like the North Korean version of Godzilla. For anybody unaware, it's a Kaiju movie. It's a giant monster that is based off the Korean mythology and lore of the Pulgasari monster, which is an actual thing in their mythology. And, you know, some interesting little tidbits here is this movie was a co-production between North Korea and Toho Studios. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more about that coming up here. So, Cameron, I'll let you take this part away here.
Well, Pulgasari was the brainchild, not the basis of the story, but the movie itself. It was the brainchild of executive producer and future dictator of North Korea, Kim Jong Il. Mm-hmm. At this time, he was still his dad's number one man in North Korea, and he had a penchant for film production, and he always wanted his own version of Godzilla, and little did he know he was sitting on top of the story, ripe for a kaiju movie called Pulgasari, which is based on a Korean folk tale of a monster that eats metal and grills. But you see, the thing is, in North Korea, filmmakers and actors die on a regular basis for reasons that should be obvious, and Kim Jong Il needed a director for his master project. In 1978, the director from South Korea, Choi, was abducted in Hong Kong and taken to North Korea, where he met the future supreme leader, Kim Jong Il. The abduction of the director would last for 6 months before he escaped, and I think it was in Austria 6 months later.
Yeah, so that's essentially the backstory, summarized Cliff Note style for y'all. Basically, the director was kidnapped, and of course, you know, most of the actors and other people involved with the set productions were all slave laborers, with the exception of the Toho Studios crew that was brought in, because some of these scenes were filmed in China. Like, whatever parts weren't made in North Korea or whatever, the rest of it was made in China. So, essentially talking about Toho's involvement, I should note that the Godzilla suit actor from like the later half of the Showa era, all the way through like the beginning of the Heisei era, Kenpachiro Satsuma also portrays the Pulgasari monster, suitmation, or whatever you want to call it, right? Now, he believed this movie to be a Chinese production. He was obviously lied to, you know, because at the time, North Korea and Japan had a huge beef, understandably so, especially for all the kidnappings and weird shit that was going on. But again, he is the one portraying the monster on screen, just like he would portray Godzilla on screen. And then, to further elaborate about Toho Studios' involvement, they had Yoshio Suzuki, who was kind of like the special effects and art director for Toho. He flew into North Korea around 1985, and he attended a meeting with the rest of the Japanese and North Korean crews. And of course, basically, all this was all under the blessing of Kim Il Sung and Kim Jong Il at the time, right? And then basically, you know, North Korea wanted to be recognized as like an international, you know, film. How would you say? You know how they have like the Cannes Festival of all the international films. Well, North Korea wanted to be a part of that, and a movie like this was kind of an attempt to get some international notoriety. So, and we'll talk about the production and like the costumes and other aspects of this movie later on as well. So, I mean, other than that, maybe you can discuss some bits and pieces about the plot here.
Okay. Pulgasari is based on a folktale from feudal Korea. For those who don't know about the history of Korea, prior to them being occupied by Japan in the 1900s, they had their own little empire or dynasty. And the dynasty depicted in Pulgasari is the Goryeo dynasty. And in this movie, the king strictly controls the land, subjecting the peasants into misery and starvation, which, of course, what North Korea does to its own people today.
What a good guy.
Well, yes. Anyway, the blacksmith who's the best in the land, Heisei, is imprisoned and starved to death for defending his people from not communism, but the king or whatever the emperor of Korea is at the time. Shortly before he dies, he grabs all the rice he can find and makes a figurine of a monster and asks the gods to make it his creature that protects the rebels and the press and somehow overnight it comes to life.
Yeah. So it's essentially the core plot of the movie, besides the the plot where the peasants form an army to overthrow the evil, greedy king, and the Pulgasari monsters kind of use to aid them in that effort. In no way, shape, or form is that any kind of communist propaganda of any sort. But basically, yeah, the monster grows, and it does so by eating metal, which is like one of the key aspects of the lore. Because it starts off literally like the size of a little figurine, as you said, and then it starts eating like forks and other like metal utensils and tools, and eventually it grows, to Godzilla size. Now, in addition to the blacksmith, right? So his daughter, Ami, is the one that receives the figurine, right? And she oversees its growth and development eventually. The reason why this monster actually comes to life in the first place is after her father's death, right? She's trying to console her little brother. And while she's sewing his clothes, she pokes herself with the needle, cuts herself, and then the blood is what gives life to the figurine. And then everything after that ensues. And then she's the one that names it Pulgasari as far as story relevance goes. And then yeah, it's actually, as far as some of these sequences go, it's actually well done. Some of it is but there was a lot of effort that went into actually making this movie.
Right. Anyway, basically the plot of the movie itself, once Pulgasari comes to life, he feeds on any metal that comes his way, and by doing so he becomes bigger and bigger, to the point, as we say, he becomes Godzilla size. Pulgasari joins the peasants who are fed up with their poverty and suffering, and they form an army on intent of during the monarchy with the Pulgasari, which by the way, this is some of the most blatant communist propaganda I've ever seen. A monster comes to the aid of the oppressed to defeat the rich and powerful. powerful, all that happy bullshit. Bullshit. While at the same time, North Korea was doing the same thing to their own people. Like it was like irony in a way.
Yeah.
Eventually, Pulgasari and the peasants destroyed the capital of their king, and I guess they killed the king as well, and they prevail.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to just talk more about some of the technical aspects, like costume and design. I mean, the plot's pretty straightforward, you know. I mean, they like the king's army is general. I did have a couple clever ideas to stop the monster. Eventually, like the one idea that actually almost worked is they dug a hole big enough to trap the monster in, and then they could just burn the fucker. But that almost worked. So that was creative, right? I mean, the best thing to compare this movie to would be like the 1984 Godzilla Returns, as far as kaiju movies go, or any of the Gamera movies that came out around that time. Like the 80s wasn't really a good time for good kaiju movies.
No, it wasn't.
You know, it just wasn't. You know, but I mean, the Pulgas, like when the monster's at full size, right? If you didn't know any of the lore or any of the backstory to this movie or anything else, like it looks cool as fuck. Like as far as a kaiju design, it's actually cool looking. Now I do know Kim Jong Il requested that the monster look like a bowl, kind of. That's why it resembles the shape that it does a bit. But the suit's well made, especially for that era. And you know, it's an intimidating looking kaiju monster. Gotta give him credit there. And then the costumes and like a lot of the sets were pretty intricate as well. You know, very vibrant colored costumes, very accurate to that era. I mean, I've done some research in Korean history that dates around to that era. I mean, they nailed the aspect for sure. Like, even if there are inaccuracies, right? I mean, they did nail the theme and the aspect pretty damn well. And then the fact, like, you know, North Korea put a lot of slave labor effort into some of the set productions, right? You know, really, the sets look magnificent. Gotta give them credit there. Now, there are obvious scenes where everyone looks phony and fake as fuck. Like, there's scenes where they're trying to, like, stop the monster with fucking boulders or whatever. And you can tell it's just foam rocks. Like, they don't even hide it well. And then there's other just cheesy moments sprinkled throughout the movie. But, I mean, as far as kaiju movies go, how would you rate this one? As far as kaiju movies go.
To be honest, I would give the movie a 7 for effort, but I would still give the movie a 4 overall because like it's still half-as done half-as done in the end of the day, even though this is North Korea's best attempt of trying to get into more prestigious film festivals and all that sort of stuff related to it. It's just like North Korea does not have what it takes to start a true film industry, and if they did, people would be dying left and right trying to make better quality productions. Like productions, like the reason I don't give it a higher rating is because some aspects of the movie were very fake, but at the same time, they tried very well on the costumes, some art design, and even the design of Pulgasari is actually impressive, but at the end of the day, the execution failed.
Yeah. I mean, besides like the costume and set pieces looking magnificent, like some of the storytelling is somewhat incoherent, right? Like they just shoehorn the propaganda whatever they could. Like they don't even hide it. You know, but as far as kaiju movies, you know, I mean, if you want to ignore the backstory and production themes of this movie, like if you just watch this without knowing anything prior to watching it, I'd give it a good 6. Like, you gotta compare this one to like the kaiju movies released around this time and before it. It does have a good human story. Whether or not you like the propaganda aspect to it or not, there's actually a compelling human story to it that is watchable. You know, one of the biggest criticism of the Godzilla movie, especially during the Showa era, were the human characters. Like, just get the fuck off the screen. I want to see the monsters just fight. You know,
it's true. Well, but again, my rating for Pulgasari stands. Like, there's a good human story to the movie. It's just the execution failed at the end of the day, and the story itself it's complete irony because in North Korea, it's a very few who oppress the many in North Korea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dig too much into the propaganda side of the thing there, but yeah, it is ironic that a bunch of communists make propaganda about how we, the peasant and the poor and the working, whatever, the farmers, can unite and overthrow the greedy capitalist. And then they get controlled by a greedy capitalist, basically. Or even worse, a fucking fascist dictator. Yeah, arguably, their fate was worse after that. But I'm not going to go into the historical background of the communist takeover of Korea. You know, it is a sad story. And it's even unfortunate, like, again, this movie was directed by a kidnapped director. So, you know, it's made with slave labor against this fucker's will. Granted, he did a goddamn good job considering all the circumstances. You know, and there's even debate that he didn't fully direct the movie, that other people stepped in for other bits and pieces here or there. But regardless, you gotta give him an A for effort, especially in the realm of kaiju movies. I'd give him like for overall execution, just because some of the effects look retarded. Some of them look great, some of them look retarded. Give him a C. But if you were to factor in the slave labor into everything, give it a 0 because it's made with slave labor. Yeah. But if you remove the slave labor aspect of it, as far as the kaiju movies go, again, I'll give it a 6. Like, the human story, here's the thing is, for the human story of this movie, it could have worked without the monster. Like, they could have replaced the monster with something else. Whether it's another army or some, like, you know, magnificent leader, magical person. So, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like, you could remove the monster aspect from the story and it'd still be a good story. You know, daughter watches her father starve to death due to the corruption of the fucking evil regime. And then she motivates a band of farmers to overthrow that regime. I mean, that could be a powerful, inspirational story within itself, if told without propaganda reasons. But that's why, like, I'll rate it as high as I do, because it is a compelling story. But the craziest thing about this movie, despite all the slave labor bullshit, is in the early 90s, it was remade. So the same director, after he, as you said earlier, he successfully escaped North Korea, he remade this movie with a British film or a Scottish film studio, and there's a movie called Gilgamesh or something. And it's basically the same story, but with Scottish people. You know, and they remove all the Korean background and just replace it with Scottishness. And it was a terrible, it's a terrible movie. You know, just
I was doing research about that movie too, and I saw some clips of it, and like it's bad.
Yeah, I mean the real legacy of the movie is the background of everything that led to this movie being made. That's the true legacy here, because South Korea has had many kaiju type movies come out before and since. I think the most notable one's called Yongari. You know, and they're I mean, Yungari, I would say, is a decent effort. You know, it's. I mean, kaiju movies, honestly, there's a reason why they don't get a good rep. You know, and in my own humble opinion, they work best if you throw another monster into the mix for it to fucking fight with or clash with. And if you can't do that, then you better have a goddamn good human story. Like, for instance, Godzilla -1. Like, I would go as far as saying that's probably the best kaiju movie ever made. I mean, everything about that movie works, right?
I would agree. I agree. It's not my favorite Godzilla movie, but definitely the best giant monster movie out there.
Yeah. I mean, everything about that works. And then Pulgasari is similar, where a lot of the things in Pulgasari kind of work. But of course, a lot of things don't work. You know, I mean, of course, some of the effects are kind of look dated by today's standards, which a lot of movies from that time period would look. I mean, even Godzilla Returns, Godzilla 84, 85, whatever. A lot of that shit looks dated. So, I mean, there you have it. So, for those of you who are interested, check out this movie where you can. It is up on YouTube. You can watch the full version of it. You know, I doubt you'd be able to buy it legally. You know, it's just because everything involved with the making of the movie. But you can definitely watch it on YouTube. If you're into kaiju movies, this one's a must-watch. It is good for a kaiju movie. If you're into the whole crazy background of the Korea, the Kim dynasty, as I call it, you know, watching this is an interesting aspect to understanding the history of that country, good and bad. And then, if you're into just different flavor of kaiju or foreign movie that's not Japanese, this is actually a decent watch. Like, despite the flaws, it is watchable. Maybe once is enough, you know? But it is watchable. Because, I mean, there are kaiju movies out there that are totally unwatchable pieces of shit. And this one does decent effort, all things considered. Yeah. So, later, y'all.